Welcome, everyone. Okay, so I've been talking about my rats. I don't know if you've all heard me talk about my rats, but I feel like I've been talking about my rats now for like in every setting that I can possibly talk about my rats. So we have rats, aka I'm talking about my rats. um, and I have a little, I have a meditation room, a shrine room. That's it. There is no real attic in our house, but there's lots of eaves, like attic-y places around the second floor. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, so we reclaimed part of that territory years ago, and that's my meditation room, and it's like my favorite. Not surprisingly, my favorite room in the house, and it's beautiful, and I spend a huge amount of time in there because it's also where I keep all my tarot decks. And so I meditate in there, I prostrate in there, I pray in there, I read cards in there, I film videos in there. I've like all of the Dharma talks that I've done that were online during COVID, they were in that room. So, and it's right next to our bedroom. So I'm sleeping, like 2 weeks ago, and my head is by the wall that's adjoining to the meditation room, and I hear like, and I think at first I imagined that, because I was sort of sleepy. And then I wake up and it's like, oh no, I did not imagine that. So anyway, enter the saga of it. And so there are rats in the walls. And now there's poison outside on the perimeter of the house. We went with Jared at Ask the Bugman. And okay. I mean, do you know Jared at Ask the Bugman?
Yeah, they're customers.
Oh, okay. Please tell me only good things about him.
Oh yeah, good guys. The owner's got a little dog.
Oh,
cute little dog. Yeah, he's always had his
little dog. Oh, not a rat, little dog. It turns out, of course, I mean, there's so much in this for me, but it turns out, of course, I mean, we've had rats for years. We live right on the edge of, like, just down Chambers as you go over the hill, right down that hill. So we're right on the edge of Lorraine Valley. And I mean, people have chickens and goats and compost, and and there's rats. So this is not a new problem. When Jared came out to our house, he's like, yeah, okay, you guys, yeah, yeah. Shaking his head, he's pointing at all the very anyway. So it's been a huge thing because it's like any kind of thing in our lives, it's feeling all the feelings, thinking all the thoughts, working with the precepts, knowing what, really not closing my eyes to what it would mean to put down the poison, like what that is, doing the research, being like, okay, this is terrible. But, so all of that, right? And exploring all of that and coming to a conclusion, and it being like every ethical decision, this is going back to Six Paramita. It's like every decision that we make where, we will screw it up, and that's karma. And yet, right, we meet it with as much vivacity and presence of mind and open-heartedness, and circumambulating the wise and awakened heart of Prajna. And one of the things that has been very clear to me in the process of all of this is that I am exactly like a rat. I am a rat. For me, the most salient fact, I mean, there's a number of salient facts, and I won't only talk about rats today. We won't spend, but to me, the most salient fact about rats, besides the ways in which they are our shadow, rats live alongside humans. They inhabit the spaces which we live in because we have lots of food and garbage and excess. They are us. They will, as Jared from Ask the Bugman will say, he's like, he's not a philosopher. He's not, he's not a Buddhist, but he's like, yep, Rats, they're just like people. They are people. They're like us. They will just grow and grow and grow and grow and fill their habitat until something stops them. It's like, oh yeah. So that's really salient, that way in which rats are just like us. But then also, and this is to the point for today, this thing about rats that they have open-rooted dentition is the technical term. You know this thing about rats' teeth? That they grow and grow and grow.
Oh.
That rats have to chew, they have to gnaw. If they don't, left unobstructed, their teeth will grow as much as 1 millimeter every day, which over the course of a year is like more than a foot. That's a lot. Exactly. So they need to be chewing. They are continually gnawing. They are continually gnawing. And why do they have to gnaw like that? Their teeth are growing. They can't eat unless they gnaw. So it's not that they, I tried to figure out this conundrum. They can't use their teeth to eat. They have to gnaw, or else they can't use their teeth to eat. They can't take in nourishment unless they continuously gnaw. They gnaw in order to eat. They eat in order to gnaw. It's relentless, right? And I realized, like, that's me. Continual, relentless gnawing. It's not just about being hungry. It's a kind of activity that keeps perpetuating the conditions to eat in order to perpetuate the conditions to eat, right? Does this make sense? It's not not utilitarian. I'm thinking about, Inda, you bringing up utilitarianism last week. It's not utilitarian in the way we think it is. It's not like they're trying to eat. They have to gnaw or else they can't eat. Isn't that weird? But that's me. And this is just a description of dukkha, of suffering, of unsatisfactoriness. That is the rats are I mean, it's not a rat in the center of the wheel of life. It's a rooster and a snake and a pig. But if I were to do it over again, someone put me in charge of Buddhist iconography, there would be a rat there. Because it's a rat race. It's a literal rat race, right? So the second noble truth, right? The second noble truth, this I'm going to be quoting, this is from the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Dharma wheel turning sutra, the sutra where the Buddha, the setting of it is he is giving his very first sermon after he awakens to the people who were his companions, the ascetics that he left, who were like, dude, you are not being a good ascetic. He left them. They thought gnawing is the word I want. So he says, now this, monks, for the spiritually ennobled one, this is his description of the second noble truth, is the dukkha originating true reality. So the second noble truth is the truth about how dukkha arises in the world. It is this gnawing, right? It is this gnawing which leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and attachment, seeking delight now here, now there. That is gnawing for sense pleasures, gnawing for existence, gnawing for the extermination, not a good word to use in the context of rats, gnawing for the extermination of what is not liked. But that sense that this is this gnawing, right, that keeps the wheel turning, right? The rat race, the treadmill of existence, this continual wheel of gnawing in order to eat, in order to eat, in order to gnaw, right? But does this make sense so far, right? And so the big question, and it is the question that we are coming to today, more profoundly than we have in considering any of the other paramitas, in considering the paramita for today, which is dhyana, the paramita of meditation, the perfection of meditation. We're coming to the question of how do we stop that gnawing? Like, how can we quiet that gnawing? How do we live with this open-ended, open-rooted dentition that is the nature of us? How can we stop gnawing? And this is this other thing about gnawing, because as I've been thinking about, and I recommend this when you're dealing with problems like rats or any other problem in life, like to let, in the way that we work with the imagery of a story, to allow yourself to work with the content of your own life as if it was the stuff of story or dream. So I've been really, really like, what is the way I've been thinking about this is kind of like, obviously it's not fun to have rats in your house. They're not in the house, they're in the walls, they're not in the house. Because the house is what's inside the walls, right? So they're not in the house. It's no fun. And also it's horrible to think about, killing and poison and what that does. But what's my problem with this problem? Like, why is it so upsetting? So I've been chewing on that, right? I've been chewing on that problem. And what strikes me is that I'm not just like a rat in terms of my gnawing of the unsatisfactoriness of desire. My gnawing is also me chewing on problems. There's a kind of relentless push to understand that the gnawing is both dukkha and the path of clarification, the path of awakening somehow. That those two sides seem joined. The relentlessness of gnawing is also what keeps us striving to awaken. Does this make sense? There is in me that which goes at the conditions of my life. It's acutely uncomfortable. It's also the thing that makes me wonder, what am I going to do about the rats? Okay. I wanted us to kind of dive into the stuff of today by doing a little bit of a free write. And for folks who are listening either now or after this, I need a piece of paper too. For those who are listening to this now or later, if you want to, kids, try this at home. Take out a piece of paper and a pen, or open up your computer to take notes. So we'll just take a few minutes for this, but I just wanted to kind of get the rat wheels turning, as it were. So there are 3 questions here that let's just take a few moments to just free write about. So the first question is, what are you gnawing on right now? And if gnawing, if that word kind of stymies you, like doesn't feel like a fruitful word for inquiry, just what are you clinging to right now? What are you grasping right now? Where are you clenching right now? And then how is that causing suffering for you right now? And, you can answer all of these together or one, or, just see where it takes you. And then the third question is, how is that gnawing or clinging or grasping connected to your spiritual life, to your spiritual striving? Do these questions make sense? And so let's just take like 5 minutes, and I just encourage you not to think too much and just let the hand write. maybe just a couple minutes more. Was that the fruitful question for folks? Is it a fruitful question for folks? Anyone don't have to share, but does anyone want to share what is coming up? Did it feel like, is there a connection between the grasping and your spiritual path? Does it feel like there's a connection? What, how so? What is that connection?
Well, for me, I mean, it's this time of year, holidays. There's a lot of like, like baggage, stuff that I haven't let go of or haven't, worked through. And so, in the past, I've been like, oh, I'm just gonna travel somewhere. I don't know, think about it. This year, I was like, my mom passed away in March, so I was like, oh, this year I'm gonna stay here and see what happens. And there's just, there's all kinds of potential drama. Let's just put it that way. But yeah. So like it really, really wants to come out as anger. It dips into that really fast. And then I'm like, like yesterday I was like reeling, trying to like reel back, and like figure out where it's starving. And so like there's definitely suffering there, especially when it goes into the anger. There's a lot of my like, it sort of like sets my mood a little bit. So there's other people probably are experiencing not the best version of me. So makes like meditating tonight. I was like, was that 40 minutes? That was not 40 minutes.
Because you were doing that, right?
Yeah. When like Saturday I was at the retreat, it was like, it's totally different. It was just like one little thing happened yesterday, like a phone call, and just like opened up all this stuff. I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
But it's not all bad because whether I'm doing this, whether I'm doing things here or not, it's still there, and my reaction to it is a lot different. So
I like. Sorry, you go. Colin, I like the way you used that image of phrasing of, I reel it back.
Yeah.
Like to try to get to this, so dhyana, right? The paramita of meditation. What is the perfection of meditation? It's zazen, right? Whatever our tradition means by Zazen, we're talking about this paramita, right? And that description of Zazen that's in the Dogen's discussion of the universally recommended instructions of Zazen that goes back to the 7th century ancestor Shito or Sekito Kisen's grassroots hermitage poem. But this idea of Zazen is taking the backward step, turning the light and shining it inward. Like whatever that is, whatever it is to kind of like, okay, here's something, here's this energy.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I could try to push it away. I could, like do what the anger management people tell me to do. I could do the techniques, or I can settle back into it. I can try to reel back to the source.
Yeah.
To get to the hot center of it. Yeah, which isn't fun.
No, and it's, I don't know if I would be able to do. It's very hard. It's hard to do, and without some kind of mindfulness, I don't know how I would do it.
It's a
I come close to even thinking about it.
It's a freaking hot potato.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want this.
Yeah.
I don't want this. No, you take it, right?
Yeah. Or like tell somebody why they're wrong, or or like tell this story about all this stuff, and it's like, no, I hope I didn't hurt your feelings. Really skilled in talking about,
how do you,
yeah.
So, that's beautiful. I mean, so that's what you're describing with the whole, all of the stuff around, family and dynamics and stuff that, I imagine there's probably also grief and stuff from having lost her mom so recently and all of that, right? All the ways in which this stuff comes up, and our teeth that are growing, we want to like kind of, I don't know, like kind of relieve the itching of this existential something, right? It's like teething. Before I had the rat metaphor, my husband would always say to me, like when I would get in a mode where I'm just like, he's like, stop, because does that metaphor make sense? It's kind of like, I itch in my soul, and I just, I think that's my most direct metaphorical encounter with dukkha. I'm itching in my soul. Our ancestor Dogen would say, okay, when that itching comes up, this is where we can encounter what he calls practice realization. It's not that somehow we're going to practice and become Prajna Buddhas who are clear of all of our yuckiness, all of our karma, and then on that side we're able to do the perfections. And it's not like the resplendent Buddhas that we already are. We just live in the world without. No, we're little rats in our little mazes. But that's the condition of realization, a condition of practice, of gnawing away mindfully with our stuff. I want to look at a quote in a second, but I'm wondering if other people had things to share about where clinging and suffering and spiritual stuff is happening in their life right now. Or what came up as you were doing your free write?
I feel like in kind of the same vein as we've already discussed, sitting this much meditation, which is like super new in my life, like relatively. At first, it was very relaxing and relieving. There was like a clear, sort of relief from the practice, but like really being immersed. We're all immersed in life, so just facing shit
Yeah.
of the mind.
Yeah.
We can't turn away from it, and yet, yeah, like you said, like it's the very thing that motivates and inspires us to keep, exploring what that is, instead of like returning to old habits and like distractions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so difficult. Life is so
Yeah. Yeah. And you're living here.
difficult.
That you're like your frame of life is okay. There's a wall, zazen now. Like your whole life is permeated with, which is a lot.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if it would be any easier anywhere else,
Yeah. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Except now it's like, yeah, you should face that instead of like.
So that's kind of an interesting thing, right? When we like make this commitment to sit with it, to be in our life, to take the backward step. When we make that what an incredible thing, that we're able to. I mean, I'm always amazed when you guys show up on a Tuesday evening. It's like, really? This is how you're spending your time? There's Netflix out there. Those TV shows will not get watched by themselves. Come on, people. What are you doing? But it's extraordinary, and I like Esho, you talking about how like the gateway that is, zazen feels good, like so we've talked about this before. We talked about this in the Four Noble Truths class too, but the sort of sense of the Buddha waking up to the truth of suffering and to the truth of dukkha, and saying, okay, what's this gonna, how am I gonna work with all of this? It's the middle way, right? Handout time, of course. This sense that, so we'll look at this quote in a second, but let me just set it up. This sense that, here we have the way we cling to stuff, the way we grasp, the way we're gnawing at things, our relentless hunger. So, the thing that would make the most sense in the world would be to say, stop craving stuff. Do what you can to cut off desire, right? Do what you can to cut off desire. So Shakyamuni and his monk ascetic friends tried that path, right? Tried the path of mortifying the flesh, of cutting off desire at the root, right? Let me just not, all the things that I crave, I'll just cut them out. I'll go cold turkey on all the parts of human life that I cling to, which is basically say, I will kill myself in this work. I will cut off life in order to stop craving. Okay? Like, I don't know, like a rat saying, I'm just going to let the teeth grow and grow and grow, or I'm just going to actually remove all the teeth. Well, that'll be the answer. But that's not the answer. The answer is neither the answer that Shakyamuni Buddha came to under the Bodhi tree, the moment of awakening, I together with all earth, and with the great earth and all beings at this moment awaken. That answer is not the path of just allowing ourselves to gnaw the foundations of our life down to sawdust, nor is it the path of like pulling out all the teeth. Sorry, I'm just going to use that metaphor endlessly tonight. It's the middle way. So what's the middle way? This quote in the box on the right, this is from the Mahatsacaka Sutta. And he's talking, this is the Buddha talking about the moment before he sits under the Bodhi tree. He says, I recall once, so he's recounting what his frame of mind was. He's starved himself almost to death, right? With his ascetic friends. I recall once when my father, the Sakyan, was working and I was sitting in the cool shade of a rose apple tree. Then, quite secluded from sensuality, secluded from unskillful mental qualities, I entered and remained in the first jhana. And jhana is the Pali word that in Sanskrit is dhyana. So the first stage of meditation. Rapture and pleasure born from seclusion accompanied by direct thought and evaluation. Could that be the path to awakening? Then following on that memory came the realization that is the path to awakening. So he's saying, I was thinking, what do I do? And then I remembered as a boy sitting under the rose apple tree, watching my father work in the fields and the other people working. And I did this thing that felt really good, where I stepped back from sensual pleasures and activity and found this ease. Maybe that's the path to awakening. I thought, so why am I afraid of that pleasure of meditation, right? That has nothing to do with sensuality, nothing to do with unskillful mental qualities. I thought, I am no longer afraid of that pleasure that has nothing to do with sensuality, nothing to do with unskillful mental qualities. But that pleasure is not easy to achieve with a body so extremely emaciated. Suppose I were to take some solid food, some rice and porridge. So I took some solid food, some rice and porridge. Now 5 monks have been attending on me, thinking, if Gautama, our contemplative, achieves some higher state, he will tell us. But when they saw me taking some solid food, some rice and porridge, they were disgusted and left me, thinking Gautama, the contemplative, is living luxuriously. He has abandoned his exertion and is backsliding into abundance. So this is the Buddha making, the guy who would become the Buddha, making the decision, I'll have some of that nice porridge that Sujata's offering me, the Good Samaritan in the Buddhist legend. She offered, okay, I'll have some of that. Because actually, in order to meditate, my body needs to be strong, needs to be whole. And yeah, it feels good. There's nothing unwholesome. It's not pleasure that's the problem. So this image of under the rose apple tree, it's a beautiful part of our tradition, because it points to the ways in which there's an ease that comes to us naturally, that doesn't require effort. It just comes to us. We can, feel, it's like we've all, I think, experienced this, where at some point you'd never meditated before. I don't know if you remember your first moment of ease meditating. Does anyone remember that? Or have we had moments of ease? I've certainly had a lot of not moments of ease meditating, but we're like, what is this? This feels good. When I teach mindfulness and people are like, holy cow, I want more.
I just started to notice it recently.
Yeah.
And it's funny because as soon as you notice it and you start thinking about it,
then you want more.
Then it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
but it's, yeah.
No, sorry.
And, I've probably been experiencing that for a while. There's a reason I keep meditating.
Yeah.
But I noticed it particularly. I think it was maybe even this last weekend.
And Zazen,
Yeah.
What was it like, Colin?
It was just kind of like gosh, I don't know what the word would be for it. It was just kind of just a very peaceful, sort of good feeling, kind of like I don't know, like you're like, I think I'll have some cheesecake, and you're like, ooh. Kind of like that. I don't know if that's right. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's just sort of like, and there's not really any, there's no reason.
There's no
reason why it's like that. It just all of a sudden, I'm just like, oh,
it's like you've let go.
Yeah.
You've let go of the, and and I like how you say, the minute you grab at it, the minute we turn it into an object, now we're gnawing again, right?
Or when I start looking for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
It's not there.
Yeah.
And there's something about the way that it is that it isn't in itself something that we have to work for, right? And yet there was something that got you sitting down and being still to begin with. So there's something here that's like, just our mind can be radiant, is radiant, without our effort. And that's, the Buddha under the rose apple tree. But he's remembering this as he's about to go sit under another tree And as he's about to withstand, the temptations of Mara and all the, like, he's about to have like a very, very heavy duty sesshin experience, like he's about to, so he's remembering the rose apple tree, this moment of just natural ease. And it's allowing him to then set his intention to do something that is not going to be easy. That's going to require everything, right? And that seems important too. Esther, you look like you had a thought there.
I just listening.
Okay. Sorry. Years of college teaching. It's like, read their facial expressions and see if they want to talk. Okay. So he is also referencing, this kind of way of talking about meditation in this quote from the sutra that sees there being like these levels of meditative absorption that you can achieve. So the classic description of the 4 jhanas, the dhyanas. The first is detachment from the external world and a consciousness of joy and ease. So it's that moment of retreat, and when things can kind of like, cheesecake. The second is concentration with suppression of reasoning and investigation. So that like one-pointed concentration of samadhi. The third is the passing away of joy with the sense of ease remaining. And the fourth is the passing away of ease also. So it's these successive, like letting go of any kind of object, any kind of state, mind or bodily state. The passing away of ease also bringing about a state of pure self-possession and equanimity. Now I mention these and I'm looking at them because I've never practiced the 4 jhanas. We don't do it in Zen. But it's this common way of saying, okay, there's going to be a technique here. And we can like ascend the states of meditative concentration. Like this is something that we can do, right? And in the Jataka tale that we had assigned for today, there's that very much this strong sense of this is something that you do, and if you do it right, you'll ascend the path toward this complete cessation, disappearance of craving. But that's not our tradition. Our tradition is the tradition of practice realization. And this is what the passage on the left is from Rafe Martin's discussion of today's story. And I'm wondering if someone will start us off and read the first paragraph. And yeah.
Zen Master Dogen, the great Japanese Soto master, insists that practice is realization, and realization practice. The equally brilliant and fiercely iconoclastic Japanese Zen master
EQ.
Additionally states, most unequivocally, there is no natural Shakyamuni, meaning that practice realization takes directed effort. All beings are Buddha, says Huan in the Zazen Wasan.
Yeah.
Or something. But that doesn't mean you then just relax and do as you please, thinking, we're Buddhas. How cool. He certainly didn't. Practice at his temple was said to be fierce enough to draw blood.
Yeah. Does this make sense what he's saying? So Rafe Martin here is referring to this understanding in Dogen that is in our school. So this is on page 58 of the Sutra book. We used to chant these universally recommended instructions for Zazen every Tuesday night. And then we used to chant them at lunch service when we had sesshin. Now we're not chanting them so much. They're really, I don't know if any of you have encountered them in a class on Zazen or anything. Has anyone encountered this before? You have, Esha, Andy. Yeah. Yeah, it's really worth, if you haven't read this before, I sent you the text of it, really worth reading. But this first paragraph, Dogen says, the way is originally perfect and all-pervading. How could it be contingent on practice and realization? That that is the question at the heart of Zazen and at the heart of our tradition. Like, we are all already Buddhas. The Buddha Shakyamuni woke up under the Bodhi tree, said, I, together with the great earth and all beings, awaken at this time. We're already there. There's nothing to achieve. We already have complete, perfect, beautiful hearts of wisdom, right? If that's true, if it's all Buddha, how could it be contingent on practice and realization? Why would I need to do anything? The true vehicle is self-sufficient. What need is there for special effort? Indeed, the whole body is free from dust. Who could believe in a means to brush it clean? If we're all radiant Buddhas, what's missing? What's wrong? I'm not a rat, right? I'm a Buddha. It is never apart from this very place, the way. What is the use of traveling around to find it? Like, the way is here. It's right, as as Hojuzam says, the way is right beneath our feet. And yet, if there is a hair's breadth deviation, it is like the gap between heaven and earth. If the least like or dislike arises, the mind is lost in confusion. That sense that, like, how often, as you were saying, Colin, like that feeling of total contentment, it vanishes instantly, right? It's like, I'm at ease. Oh shit, who's making that noise, right? It's like all these moments in retreat where you're thinking, oh, everyone's so perfect and this is so beautiful and I love this food, this oatmeal, and it's all so great. And then the person next to you, belches loudly and smelly, and you're like, I hate these people. Right? But that, like, it vanishes so quickly. But this is the central fact of our tradition. So Rafe goes on to say, instead, as Ikkyu makes clear, this is where dhyana begins, with the recognition of a need to work at it. So it is necessary for each of us, the Buddha included, that seems really important, to practice in order to actually realize what's been there from the start. Without some form of practice, innate enlightenment, innate perfection, that rose apple tree moment, right? The paramitas, or perfections themselves, might only awaken in times of great loss, grief, or danger, where our usual state of monumentally sleepy self-centeredness has no choice but to give way to something greater than itself. That statement, by the way, this is why I'm a chaplain, right? Because in the hospital, I see people at moments of great intensity when they are as close to waking up as humans ever get, right? It's beautiful to be there at that moment and to see that openness of heart. But then what, right? Then what happens to us? It's like the fleeting cheesecake moment, right? The rose apple tree cheesecake moment. That's fleeting. In those moments of great calamity where our hearts burst open because they have to burst open, those are also fleeting. We might say that's only because we all beings, ourselves included, already have enlightened wisdom, or are enlightened wisdom, that we have both the faith and the ability to work at realizing it. The Zen image of the carp exerting itself to leap up the waterfall and become a dragon makes the effort of such ongoing dhyana practice visible. The carp doesn't simply go with the flow, but leaps up against the current. It takes practice. The carp tries and fails and falls back maybe 99 times. Then maybe on the 100th attempt, giving its all, goes all the way, leaping to the top. As the old joke goes, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. I'm wondering if this resonates for folks, this idea of this tension between our innate Buddhahood and the need for practice and how that plays out. Yeah. How's that working for you?
I guess I'm just feeling like if I only wait till the tragic moments in my life or something to break it all open, then that's different than I could have a bodhicitta moment every morning or something like that, like a moment of my heart opening or whatever. just waiting for calamity or whatever causes the breaking open.
Yeah, I mean, if we wait for I mean, in my experience as chaplain, people have profound experience. It's also like working with inmates, incarcerated men. Like it's also working with college students, frankly. We have these moments in our lives where things do break open, where it's like, oh, what am I doing with my life? Oh, how do I turn things around? Oh, I'm mortal. What am I? But those things break open, and then what? Right? I mean, in my own life, I can think of so many moments where it's like, oh, and then it's. But how do we sustain that? The story for today was really. It's a very strange story. The story of Gangamala. It's like, wasn't it strange?
Yeah.
It's like one of these things. Have you ever seen a movie where the cinematic technique where you'll have like a guy and he gets a cup of coffee and he goes down the street and then he picks up a newspaper and then there's a story in the newspaper and suddenly we're now in the newspaper with the story person there, and then they're like stroking a cat and then the cat runs off and now we're with the cat. That kind of like these stories that just you think you're going to be in one place and then oh no, the story keeps going. But I think that movement of the story, the way you keep thinking it's over and then there's another character who carries it on, it's playing out this truth about practice, which is that even the Buddha had to work at it. Like we all have to work at it. So the gist of the story, I'll just run through it because it's a story that's really about desire. And I'm curious about what you guys might think of it. Desire, another name for tanha, for the gnawing energy. So first, the Bodhisattva, the Buddha before he's the Buddha, is a laborer. He goes to work for a merchant who's a good man. The merchant is encouraging monthly fasts and meditation among all of his team. The laborer is working. He goes to get lunch and nobody's around. And then he realizes, oh, it's a fast day. And so he thinks, okay, I'm gonna meditate with them. He asks the merchant, is it too late? Can I join the Zazen Kai halfway through the day? And the guy goes, yeah, sure, come on, join it. And so he just dives into it, but he's been working really hard. So he's starving, hasn't eaten anything, and he starts to meditate. And he becomes really enfeebled. And people come to him and say, you should, no, eat, stop meditating. He's like, nope, I'm gonna keep meditating. He says, I've made up my mind and I've taken a vow. So he's going to meditate. He's going to go for it, right? He's doing sort of the opposite of Shakyamuni. In Shakyamuni taking nourishment, he's like, I've taken my vow. I'm going to do this thing. By sunrise, he was drifting in and out of consciousness. As a kindness to him as he lay dying, he was carried in his bed from the hut and set down in the open air and morning light. The birds were singing in the trees. The Bodhisattva opened his eyes and saw a noble coming along the road in a gilded chariot drawn by white horses. A desire to live like that, to know that kind of splendor, passed through his mind. And with that final thought, he passed from life and entered the great ocean of birth and death. The thought carried him like a raft, and he gets reborn as the son of a king. Okay, so so now, we've moved from, the first protagonist into the second. So now the Bodhisattva has died. He's now reborn into the womb of a great queen, and he's now a prince, and he's a prince named Prince Udaya. So that's the first step in it. But it's kind of weird. It's like he's so committed to give up everything for meditation that he dies. And as he's dying, he sees, oh, nobleman, that looks cool. And then he's born in that life, right? So that's interesting. And then he's born as Prince Udaya. who as a baby, for some strange reason, stops eating once a month. And the baby just naturally fasts once a month because this is the logic of legend, right? So he carries that strength. This is how karma works, people. This is how long it takes us to work these things through, to work through our baggage. As Prince Udaya, he then remembers his past life as the laborer, and he thinks, oh, this is so cool. I meditated really hard one day, and I was reborn as a prince. And he has this little joy inside. And it reminds me of all the ways in which, when you start meditating, you start a life of practice and you start to notice like the stuff. You're like, I remember when my first time when I was meditating, I could feel my breath. I was like, I was so excited. Or the first time I noticed that I could sit with pain and the pain would kind of dissipate. And then I realized, I could actually just take some ibuprofen. This isn't such a big deal, but these moments were like, this is so good. It's like a little gift to ourselves that we've discovered this thing that feels so wholesome and so good. And it becomes this little joy that we want to hold on to. The cheesecake moment. We want to, it's like, this is so good.
Well, I don't know if cheesecake is the right word.
It depends on if you like cheesecake.
It's like a little, I don't know.
Yeah.
Ease is probably the best.
But, right.
And
we savor it, and it's a good feeling, and we want to hold on to it, and we want to tell all of our friends about it, right? And nobody's interested. Nobody wants to hear your Zazen story, right? But so that's interesting too, that as he's reborn as Prince Udaya, and then he becomes King Udaya, and he remembers the fruit of his meditative practice, he holds on. There's a little gnawing there too, like, oh, this is yummy. I'm gonna hold on to this. This is great. This is great. And now the story, the protagonist shifts again in a way, because what then happens is a character comes into the picture. It's a festival day, and this very, very poor man comes into the picture, and he has a lovely lady, and they each have a halfpenny, right? And she says, I'll give us our halfpenny if you go get your halfpenny, which is all across town, like buried somewhere. I don't really understand why his halfpenny is across town, but you get your halfpenny, and then we'll put our two halfpennies together, and we'll have a whole penny, and we'll spend it on all the great stuff, and we'll really enjoy ourselves today. And the guy who goes on to be called Halfpenny, he's like, yeehaw, we're gonna celebrate. And he walks across in the blazing heat in search of his halfpenny in order to take it back to his lovely lady and have a festival day. And King Udaya, at that point, he's now king, sees the one person who's walking across blazing sands but looking completely content. And he's like, what has that guy got? He's got something. He's got some cheesecake, right? He's got something there. And so he brings in Halfpenny, who doesn't want to talk to him because he's in search of his halfpenny. They have to capture him with the police and take him to King Udaya. Now this is interesting too. Like, really, King Udaya, you're going to arrest some guy to tell you about his ease? The king brings him there. And he says, what's going on? The guy tells him a story. He's like, so your commitment to celebrate with this woman that you love, that was great enough that you didn't feel the pain of the heat? And the guy's like, what does he say? He says, desire burns hotter than the sun. Thinking of her, I feel fine. So I have everything I need, right? I don't have that desire burning me, but I got to get to my halfpenny. And the king says, I'll give you all of the wealth in the kingdom. He's like, I don't want it. I want my halfpenny. The guy says, you can rule the kingdom with me, and you can have your halfpenny too. The guy says, okay, if you split the kingdom so that it includes the side that has my halfpenny, I'll do it. So he becomes King Halfpenny, and he and King Udaya rule together very happily until they're just kings, and they're good kings, and they're both content, and they're both, men of good values, until Halfpenny, watching King Udaya sleep, suddenly has this thought, I could kill him. and take his half of the kingdom, and I'd have it all, and my halfpenny. I would have everything. And he takes up his sword. He's like, what am I doing? He puts down the sword. He takes up his sword again. He's like, I'm not going to kill him. What am I doing? He keeps having this compulsion, this gnawing, like everything's perfect, but he's gnawing. And finally he wakes up the king and says, I was going to kill you for your land. He's like, you weren't going to kill me. He's like, yes, I was. No, you weren't. Okay, well, maybe I wasn't. But in that moment, Halfpenny also sort of penetrates the truth of his own desire. He's like, I'm going to renounce everything. And he gives up everything and goes and becomes an ascetic and leads this life where he becomes completely free of all desires. And King Udaya's like, he understood something. Remember, King Udaya is the Buddha to be. And he's watching Halfpenny let go. And King Udaya, who's tasted a little bit of ease in his past life, he now says, little desire brought me fruit. Great the glory I acquired. No desire is better yet. Be resolute and gain the prize. And he thinks, I really need to let go of all desire. But he doesn't. Instead, he goes and gets a shave. And the barber, whose name is Gangamala, which is the name of the Jataka tale, not the name of the Buddhas, it's the name of the barber. The barber, for reasons that are too set up by the king's wife, makes the king happy in the way he does the shave. He tweezes the hairs and then shaves the king, and it feels really good. And the king says, oh, I'll give you any boon that you ask. And Gangamala, sorry, this is story time. Gangamala says, I want to know what that little poem is that you've recited over and over again. And the king tells him, he says, it's a poem about giving up desire. And Gangamala says, I want to do that. And as Rafe Martin says, he literally throws in his barber towel, he throws in the towel, and he gives up everything, and he becomes an ascetic. He renounces everything. He gives up all his desire. And he becomes a Prajna Buddha, someone who has totally let go of all craving. And King Udaya, who is the person who's going to go on to become the Buddha, is like, what he said, what he did, that is amazing, letting go of all desire. So that is the strange story, where you have all of these figures who are holding on and then letting go, and where the central figure is the Buddha, who's really us, who's tasted a little bit of meditation, which actually took his life in the previous life. But it's sort of like he's like the person who went on one retreat, and then his life, that's how I read it. It's like he went on a retreat, his life got a lot better from learning a little bit of mindfulness. Golden chariot, nice, right? And he's watching all these other people. So I don't know, what, if anything, of that story makes sense? How are we supposed to let go of all of our desires? Are we supposed to give everything up? Are we supposed to renounce all of our possessions and go and live in a cave? Is that the path? Because if that's the path, I've screwed it up. So I'm wondering what you guys think about desire, about holding on.
Middle way.
Yeah. So what does that mean to you, though? Because if the middle way, I'll put it this way, Myobun, if the middle way is just not too much grasping, not too much indulging, just like Goldilocks, then if it's just like, let me be a little bit better, then we've just shrunk in the ends of hedonism, pleasure seeking, and asceticism. You know what I mean? If it's like, okay, I'm not going to give up everything and shave everything and stop eating, and I'm not going to, I'm not going to indulge in all things, then we just will find a new set of extremes. So the middle way isn't like going to be just.
No, it's like, for me, I just think of it as the balancing act. I'm just trying to find, I do this extremes and try to find the balance, and every day I come back at it again and walk type room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just that. I don't try to do the extremes,
Yeah.
you know, but I'm not saying I have perfect balance, but I just,
Balance.
I'm not trying to be the perfect this or perfect that.
Yeah. I think that the image, that idea of balance is super important, right? So the middle way isn't going to be like, let me pick the golden mean between indulgence and asceticism. Like, let me be a little bit indulgent and a little bit ascetic. It's not going to be that. It's going to be something like, really, this balance between the way is, perfect and all pervading. I don't need to worry about anything. And, oh yeah, practice. Like, I have to work really hard. Somehow, a balancing between that innate splendor of the awakened heart that is ours, somehow that rose apple sense of things, and then this pushing, this striving. That's maybe one way to talk about it. I'm struck in the story by the fact that all of the figures are grasping. They all hold on to something. Even the first moment with the Buddha as a laborer, where he's like, I made a commitment. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to eat. I'm going to sit here. It reminds me of my beloved Dharma brother, who samurai, sat through knee pain and then had a meniscus surgery to repair his knee, right? It's like that kind of like, we're just going to do it, right? That's a kind of grasping, and then halfpenny, right? I just want what's my halfpenny here? Like my piece of contentment. I'm going to hold on to it. This is, I've figured it out. I have, it's me. It's my integrity. It's myself. And then Gangamala, the barber, who is like, okay, I'm going to achieve Pratyeka Buddhadom. I'm going to be able to transcend the conditions of this human life. And then, of course, King Udaya himself was like, I tasted some sweetness. Is my little song now, I tell myself, as I live this beautiful life. So everybody's holding on to something. And in that sense, it might be more like this middle way, this balance on a practical level. It might come back to what you were saying earlier, Colin, about reeling it in. Like, that the desire here, what the perfection of dhyana is all about, is, can I sit with that desire? Can I actually, be in the middle of the burning and the yearning without trying to push it away, without yielding to it, without pushing it away. Which I think ends up looking like this balancing act that you're talking about.
And compassion for me getting caught again and again.
Right. Because you're going to have to get caught again and again. I mean, in fact, if you don't get caught again and again, how are you going to know how the gnawing of the rat is actually the striving toward liberation? If we don't get caught again and again, then we're just stuck on the wheel. So we gotta, it's like that, oh, there it is again, right? It's like what I always say when I'm teaching mindfulness to non-Buddhists, I'm like, and people are saying, oh, I mean, everyone's experience with meditation, right? You meditate and you just realize, oh, my mind is crazy. It's just crazy, right? Everyone's experience with that. And people who are just encountering this without a sangha for the first time, it's like, I'm doing this wrong. Well, even in a sangha, we think we're doing it wrong, right? But what I always like to say in those settings is, oh no, it's really fantastic to encounter your craziness, right? Because it gives you another opportunity to come right back, to take the backward step, to come right back here. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah, you're crazy. Great. Let me sit back in the middle of that. Let me not push that away. So I'm always like, yeah, you're doing another rep. The more you find yourself spinning out, great, more opportunity. There are actually, and this is the part that I think is so beautiful about our tradition. I just want to point to one part in the Dogen that is so powerful and so straightforward. So page 59. And let's actually read this together. So starting with that second paragraph, at your sitting place, we're just going to read those 3 paragraphs on 59. At your sitting place, spread out a thick square mat and a round cushion. Sit either in the full lotus or half lotus position. In the full lotus position, place your right foot on your left thigh, then your left foot on your right thigh. In the half lotus, simply place your left foot on your right thigh. Tie your robes loosely and arrange them neatly. Place your right hand on your left leg and your left hand on your right palm, thumb tips touching lightly. Straighten your body and sit upright, leaning neither left nor right, neither forward nor backward. Align your ears with your shoulders and your nose with your navel. Rest the tip of the tongue against the front of the palate, with teeth and lips closed. Keep your eyes open and breathe softly through your nose. Once you have adjusted your posture, take a breath and exhale fully. Rock your body right and left and settle into steady, immovable sitting. Think of not thinking. Not thinking. What kind of thinking is that? Non-thinking. This is the essential art of Zazen. Now, why I point that out is it's like, it's doing this thing that we don't think of Zen texts as doing. It's like giving us like the point by point instructions. Okay, put your left foot on your right thigh, your right foot, it's telling you how to do the full lotus, and then you put your left hand on your left foot and your right. It's telling us how to do it. It's telling us to rock our bodies left and right. He's spending so much time talking about posture because he's telling us this really important literal truth about what it means to say that I, together with all beings in the great earth, awaken at this time. That the earth upon which we evolved, our home, the earth holds us, holds our bodies, our skeletons perfectly. We evolved on this planet, after all. We evolved as bipeds. And so we can literally find that balance that you described, Myobun, when we sit Zazen. Finding the way in which our body, in relationship to the earth, in relationship to gravity, in relationship to this place that is our home, our body knows how to do this. It knows how to find this centered, balanced place. So he's showing us how this literal posture is no different from this very hard to understand instruction of think of not thinking, non-thinking. Like, what do you mean, Dogen? Mm-hmm. Well, he's telling us what he means. He means be here together with the earth. You are balanced. You are aligned. This is natural. But I didn't know how to sit Zazen when I started coming to the temple. No one does. This isn't natural. Natural is leaning on the couch and eating bonbons and watching Netflix. That's natural, right? But it's like that. It's that, when you find a posture that works for you in meditation, your back kind of relaxes. I mean, when you find a posture that works for you in those moments, we know how to do this. It is innate to us. The paramita of dhyana is about that innate ease that we can take, where our gnawing can settle in relationship with the great earth. And although it is natural, it's not easy. So that's why we practice, right? And why we come together in community like this. All right, next week is our last week. We're going to wrap it up. We're going to end up at the very heart of the heart and talking about wisdom, Prajna Paramita herself. Okay, thank you guys.